This is actually going to be super fun. There are some terrible ones. There's some really fun ones. There's all kinds of shit in here, Finn. This thing is wacky. This thing is wacky. What did we do with it?
This is so dumb.
It looks cool as well. It looks very, very cool. It does
look pretty cool, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Covenant Wars! The fourth and final Covenant abilities, the controversial system that is definitely mounting by the day with its controversy. I am joined again by Mr. Fingal, who we are going to go over these. We've been putting so much testing into these now. They've cycled around a few times into figuring these out for you, trying different things with them, doing everything we can. The Necrolords, the ones from the Maldraxxus zone, these are the more undead, fleshy abominations, toxic poison type characters. Notably, all their abilities kind of have this green, wonderful green effect to them. In fact, they're some of the most animated, wouldn't you say, Finn, abilities that we've seen alongside the Night Fae.
Yeah, they look really cool. The green's generally pretty awesome, actually. Even on the Fleshcraft, the signature ability looks really good.
Yeah, let's talk about the signature ability, because it has been a point of contention. I imagine most of the feedback we've had regarding these universally is agreed that Kyrian's signature ability, Swole Boy, is garbage. But a lot of people definitely feel that Fleshcraft should be a good ability. Let's read what it does. It forms a shield of flesh and bone. It doesn't look like flesh and bone. It's a nice green, smooth bubble. Over 4 seconds that prevents damage equal to 20% of your max HP. Channeling near a corpse claims their essence to grow the shield up to 50% of your maximum HP. This is most effective against powerful enemies, meaning that if you channel over the corpse of a rare, you get a nice big thick shield, rather than relying on the corpses of many small enemies. It's a 10-yard range, 4-second channel, 2-minute cooldown. So I think we should probably explain why we've had so much feedback of this. Is that on the face of it, from like a common sense approach, just reading these abilities, Fleshcraft seems really useful, as you're generating this extra 50% of HP. That should, in theory, prevent you from dying to really overpowered abilities, maybe useful in Mythic Plus. All these elements are the arguments we've had coming towards us, whereas we, after testing it hundreds of hours now, don't feel that way, Finn.
No, not at all, really.
No.
I think the main problem for me is that the 50% part, you're going to get fairly infrequently when you want to use it. It's also a 4-second channel, which feels less reactionary than I'd like it to. If I want a big shield, I tend to want to press it right before I'm going to take damage, and this just doesn't feel that way. I would always rather have a movement one as well, which is the discussion point that we've had a few times. Is something like Venthyr universally better than something like Fleshcraft? And in my opinion, it is.
In fact, universally shared. It's a very weird conflux of information coming in. Is nearly everybody who spoke to would, who is a Mythic Raider or an extremely high Mythic Pluser, would all agree that you would just not take Fleshcraft. If it was a case that you were stuck with one for all dungeons, which is the case we are looking at, and remember in Shadowlands, this is not something that is designed to be swapped at will, then you would never take Fleshcraft. And some examples that we've been toying with is, if we knew, even if we knew, because we don't know every encounter we're going to face over the course of the Shadowlands, of course, would you ever, if it was BFA, would you ever take Fleshcraft over Venthyr if you had to have one for the entire expansion? And the answer to that is a flat no. You would never ever take this ability. The usefulness of this ability does have some uses, but primarily for me, this is useful if you are a pure solo player and you're doing some transmog. You're used to being very undergeared, so you struggle to deal with rares on your own, things like that. So you can generate the shield before you go into combat and gain a little bit of a bonus while fighting those enemies to survive that little bit longer due to your low damage. Of course, with catch-up mechanics, the chances are you're going to overpower them anyway, and nearly 100% of the usage we've had out of Fleshcraft, if we're testing in Torghast or something, has been very early enemies using it because we have it, if it happens to be Necrolord, but it is an ability that is gone and never used again once you can just tackle the enemies on your own. Further to that, because Blizzard has to design encounters around the idea that not everybody will have Fleshcraft, then of course that defeats the purpose of having Fleshcraft, because you can, obviously, the fight is designed to be survived and dealt with without it. Therefore, it doesn't really have a use because it's not gaining you any benefit. As Finn said, it is a channeled spell, so you're actually doing no damage, no healing, no tanking while you're channeling it. It does take chip damage, so while you're channeling it, it can actually be used up by the time you finish channeling it, which makes it useless in encounters, say, like Raden or Il'gynoth, where you're taking, constant damage towards the end of the fight anyway, so you're just kind of stood doing nothing, is essentially what you're doing. Really kind of sad as to how useless this ability feels.
Yeah, I think they just need to put a movement component into all of the abilities. Otherwise, the ones with movement speed are just going to be better. I know we've spoken a ton about Venthyr and how good it is, but like Night Fae is also really good.
Yep.
So if you had to choose, people are saying, well, maybe the power contained in one covenant is going to be so much higher than the other that it'll outbalance the Venthyr teleport. It might do, but at the moment, it would probably only do that if you're Night Fae, because the blink and the movement speed are almost on a par with the teleport, to the extent that if your Night Fae ability was better, you might take it.
Yeah.
But something like Necrolord, I don't think there's a single ability in this list that we'll go through that are powerful enough to justify not having the movement speed from your signature ability. I
agree. I think it needs movement speed, and I also think it needs to be instant. The channeled element of it looks cool. It's a fantastic animation, and Blizzard does like to explore their animations. One of the reasons they brought in the global cooldown was that. Mm. But its practicality is ruined by having to stand still and channel this spell. And like I said, I went through every encounter of Battle for Azeroth and was like, when would I have really wanted Fleshcraft? And I could not think of a single one. If I was looking at Ny'alotha, it's like, there's nothing in there where I want that. Would I want it at Hivemind? No. Would I want it at Il'gynoth? Absolutely not. Like, compared to Venthyr being able to port over all of the other people who are pulsing damage and not take any damage from those abilities, or the ability to teleport to my partner, if we're attacking one of the orifices, there's no comparison. There's just no side-by-side comparison of these abilities. Raden, the same. You think about the last phase where you're constantly under attack and you can't be healed. Would I want it then? No, that phase is a DPS race, certainly on progress. I don't want to stand there for 4 seconds channeling something just to come out of it and have that shield instantly removed and still be under the effects of these things. There's just no encounter I would say I would ever want Fleshcraft, or that Fleshcraft would be in any way more useful. I mean, even compared to Kyrian, as much as we mock Kyrian, it's a potion, but that would still be more useful in my eyes in some scenarios than Fleshcraft. But with movement ones, like Night Fae and Venthyr, it's no comparison. So, again, if you're a solo player, if it doesn't change, then maybe. If you're a real solo player, you tend to play the entire game or expansion very undergeared. You're probably going to find some usage out of this. But beyond that, you're either going to outgear the usage of it very quickly, and of course, none of the encounters you're going to face are designed around having it. I will bring up here, I know we're dwelling on this, but it has been one of the things that most people have said, Fleshcraft should be good. This is the one that people have been like, he's saying movement, but Fleshcraft should be good. So we do want to make the point here. A lot of people are comparing it to Mythic Plus. Some classes that struggle to get up to higher keys because they're naturally weaker, they lack defensives, and Fleshcraft would enable them to maybe get a couple of extra floors out of that character, right? Because they have this extra defensive ability. The problem with that is the characters that already have good defensive abilities and are already naturally ahead of those weaker classes, they're also going to get the benefit of being able to choose a movement-based ability, which means they're actually going to scale up far further than they are now. They're going to be able to push beyond, not only higher naturally like they are right now, but even further. The gap is likely to widen if you're a class that is hoping to rely on Fleshcraft to maybe get you up to a couple of extra floors. The other guys, like DHs, the DHs, the DKs, the rogues, who could maybe choose Venthyr to skip more packs, to bypass mechanics, those guys are going to be able to go even further than they already can. You can't ignore the fact that they're going to be able to get those benefits.
Yeah. Do you remember the MDI maybe it was last expansion actually in Legion, when there was an LA Shaman that played? And literally every single skip they did, everyone else was Night Elf, so they just Shadow Melded. But the LA Shaman had to die and be rezzed. And they were slower almost constantly because they were just having to deal with this additional almost affix that they just had to res the Shaman. And that's exactly what will happen with Fleshcraft. Yeah, it's not a bad ability. It'll allow you to take an extra hit, but other people with the movement speed stuff are just going to outstrip you.
Okay. It's unfortunate because it looks very cool. I think instant cast and some movement effects, then we could probably deal with Fleshcraft in some way. So maybe something Blizzard wants to look at. Let's get on to our classes then. This is actually going to be super fun. There are some terrible ones. There's some really fun ones. There's all kinds of shit in here, Finn. Let's start off with the most ridiculous ability so far that the Covenants have presented. This thing is wacky, and I really hope we can get to choose it at some point. I don't think we will, but we'll see. Abomination's Limb for the Death Knights. You sprout an additional limb for 12 seconds, and every 2 seconds it deals 45% of your AP as shadow damage to all nearby enemies, and it pulls an enemy to your location if they are further than 8 yards from you.
You got it, baby. I got it. That's right. I got him.
Doesn't cost anything. It has a 20-yard range. It's instant cast. Has a 2-minute CD. First playing this, I was like, I don't really see the point in this. If we're doing AoE, then all the mobs are generally gathered up, and with already having Death Grip, already the tanks being somewhat competent, very rarely do we really end up in a scenario where there's a mob still on the outside of a good AoE, at least in a controlled group. However, Mr. Finn, this thing is wacky. This thing is wacky. What did we do with it?
This is so dumb. So there's a few obvious interactions. There's a great clip of you pulling aggro on something and just running away, and it just gets gripped to you every 2 seconds. So God, I would hate to be a caster in PvP against this thing, because
we
this
locked
seems
down
so
an enemy
dumb.
for a full 12 seconds, Finn. Like, if you needed to cast a spell with a DK using Abomination's Limb, you've no chance. All they have to do is move further than 8 yards from you, and it drags you. It stops you casting. No DR. It just keeps so doing silly. It.
It's hilarious to use. I mean, the other example we had was like, because I when I initially read this, I was like, DPS DK on Necrotic Week, and your tank can run away, and you just grip things away from him. That's kind of awesome. And it's not a taunt either, so it doesn't like cause them to attack you.
Nope.
So what you did was you just sat down, and I got aggro, and you turned on Abomination's Limb, and the thing couldn't get to me.
Nope. It just kept pulling it back. I was doing absolutely nothing and allowed Finn to freely DPS these characters. You can imagine the tank trying to kite. You literally just press Abomination's Limb. It is far more powerful than an Ursul's Vortex, and just continuously just dragging all the enemies back. So the bonus of things like this, though, Finn, even is exponentially better, because it's also keeping things grouped for better DPS. So the DPS while your tank is running away is even better, because it's constantly dragging them onto basically like you're a chain chomp and dragging everything in. And as you said, in PvP, how many times do you try and get away from somebody? You try and kite away from somebody. You might get Ursul'd and then be able to get out of it. You might get gripped and then be able to get running again. Happens to me all the time. But with Abomination's Limb, it just keeps dragging you and dragging you and dragging you and dragging you. It's actually insane.
It's crazy.
It's
hilarious. It is hilarious to play with, but it's also pretty dumb as well.
Yeah, it's
so
pretty
many
dumb.
Funny interactions.
I spoke to one of our MDI players who plays a Death Knight, and he can't wait to play with it. And we did eventually get to the point where it's like, but realistically, is this that useful compared to the Night Fae Death and Decay, compared to the Venthia Blood Mist? The Kyrian ability is pretty bad for the DKs, but is it as anywhere near as useful overall? Remember, we're talking about these things from an expansion-wide POV. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's really fun. It's really silly. It's one of those things I would love to pick up and have fun with if we could choose to do so. But keep your eye out on it. If I was choosing, again, we are making this chart to choose, if all things being equal, what is the most fun to use? 100% Abomination's Limb.
Yes.
Would I actually pick it? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. I would probably go Kyrian, if not Kyrian, Night Fae, even though it is easily the most boring. but very much the strongest one. Although I will put a note here, Finn, is they have currently switched off the Night Fae effect. So
I saw that.
Yeah, it looks like they might be changing it. We did say in the Night Fae video that thing was due a hammer. The hammer might be coming.
I think the Venthyr one's really close to Night Fae. So if they change the Night Fae one at all, Venthyr is just really good. It's a good defensive, and it generates more runes and stuff for you. So yeah, I think like those two are really close. Abomination's Limb's hilarious, but realistically you're going to pick Night Fae or Venthyr.
Unless you have a lot of fun, and hopefully we can switch. Let's move on to another goofy one. The Demon Hunter Fodder to the Flame.
Yeah.
You commission a duel to the death against a condemned demon from the Theatre of Pain, which is one of the upcoming dungeons in the Shadowlands. Vanquishing your foe releases its demon soul and creates a pool of demon blood. Fighting with the pool increases your attack speed by 20% and reduces the damage that enemies deal to you by 10%. Fleshcraft treats the condemned demon as a powerful enemy, so you get a big shield. It's instant cast and a 3-minute CD. Ben, talk to us about this.
So, yeah, there's a few things that are really good about it. I thematically love this spell. Think it's great. You summon in a demon, you duel it. It doesn't have too much HP, so because Demon Hunter's stuff mostly cleaves, you don't really need to swap away from your primary target to kill it, which I was worried about initially, so
it does appear to scale with HP, though, is one thing we noticed.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed in Torghast was as I got more HP, it did as well. And it did become a little bit annoying to kill, but I think that might be a Torghast-only problem.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. The other part of it is the 20% attack speed and the 10% DR are insane. Like, they're both really good, obviously. You would want to get them. There's some issues with this ability, though. So the circle, the pool of blood, is really small.
Yes.
You can only fit 2 or 3 characters in there. In fact, I got like a Pit Lord summoned once, and it was bigger than the pool. So that needs adjusted for sure. It needs to be a bigger pool. It can also be hit by other people. Which we have a hilarious clip of, like an extreme example. But when you summon this thing in, it doesn't spawn on you. It spawns like 20 yards away in a straight line.
Yep.
So,
and fixates on you. It does come towards you.
Yeah, it walks towards you, but it doesn't do that particularly quickly. So if you're in like a Mythic Plus or a raid with 20 other people and there's just damage happening all over the place, there's a decent chance someone else kills this.
Which I did, and I apologise.
Yeah, and so Mike did. Mike just tabbed to something and you one-shot it miles away from me.
Yep.
So then you have to then move to the spot where it died. It's so weird. Like, I have a feeling that like some bosses you're going to be in a position where it will spawn on the ranged camp, they will instantly kill it with cleave, and you'll never be able to get the 20% attack speed buff, because you just can't go and stand in ranged.
Well, you can imagine a fight like N'Zoth, or Il'gynoth, or even Raden, where Raden's probably a great example, where everybody's perma-cleaving onto the elementals. And you spawn your demon, and it's got to say, run through the tanks, who also naturally cleave, and the other melee, who are going to be whirlwinding, howling blasting, maybe setting dragons off, all kinds of things. And it's just going to die, and you're actually going to be like, where is it? Because if it spawned, like, on the other side of the boss, if you're stood on his legs, where is it, and where's my pool? Where the hell is the damn thing? Or if you look at N'Zoth or something like that, where we're more in a line along the side of the boss, it spawns somewhere. It's got to travel through maybe the rogues. It's got to travel through all those characters, other demon hunters, and you'll never get the benefit. So I think there's a couple of simple changes, like Finn suggested here. One, pool being bigger, and two, probably only attackable by you. That would be a simple fix to it, so you use it, and or even make it spawn close to you would be nice. Something like that, so you can actually get the benefit. I also would like it to have even less health if they made those changes, personally, because when you press a cooldown, it's because you want it now. Right now, you're kind of like setting up to have it in like 5 seconds, assuming you can switch and kill it relatively quickly, right? Because it can die in like an I-beam blade dance, but you want to make sure that when you're pressing a DPS cooldown, it's because you want it now, not maybe in 5. And there's a margin of error there, like Finn said. It's like maybe, 3 to 7 seconds. Yeah. Is when you will actually start getting the benefit, assuming everything goes correctly. So a little bit less HP, spawning closer to you, only attackable by you, that would make a lot more sense to me. Very similar to what they did with Leotheros the Blind, as, you know, you got this enemy that only you could kill, and that therefore it works really well. So we do know that that exists in the game. I think that would make this much, much better.
Yeah, definitely. The only other thing that's a little bit weird about it is the Fleshcraft treats the demon as a powerful enemy. So you get the 50% shield, but it feels a little bit weird to use. So when you kill the demon, you just want to make use of the 20% attack speed buff. You don't want to be channeling a shield for 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using the demon to give yourself the shield, it feels a bit awkward. But you're the only class, from what I can tell, that has a guaranteed 50% shield. So,
yeah,
a balancing act, but it's a little bit strange to use.
It is a little bit strange. If you had to place your flag then, what's the most fun ability?
Oh, God. I'm not even sure I like any of the Demon Hunter ones.
They all have something weird. I think the most fun potential is probably the Hunt.
Yeah.
Because they have upped it to 100 yards now, the Hunt, which is kind of funny. But
so dumb.
I wouldn't use the Hunts, even though it technically might be the best because of the resource gen. I still think I'm going Kyrian with Elysian Decree, purely based on the fact that it's useful in all scenarios, and it doesn't currently have some weird extra element to it. It just works all the time.
Yeah, 100-yard range charge is kind of crazy fun, though.
Useful, not so much.
Yeah, useful, not so much. Not on a highly mobile class. It's just a bit of a meme, really.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go Knifey.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to another interesting one. The Necros do have all these kind of... you can see when they're having a little bit more fun with these. This is the Adaptive Swarm. You command a swarm that heals 240% of spell power or deals 150% of spell power, shadow damage over 12 seconds to a target, and increases the effectiveness of your periodic effects on them by 20%. Upon expiration, it travels to a new target within 25 yards, alternating between friend and foe up to 3 times. 40-yard range, instant cast, 25-second cooldown. So, this one is certainly more interesting than the other Druid ones, although I do want to point out, as of recording this, they have said they're going to make changes to the Night Fae ability, which we laughed at and mocked hysterically, because it was terrible, where they're going to try and make it better, although it's not going to be able for testing for a few days. So, as always, we are going to continue the Covenant Wars as they develop and change things. So we'll come back and review that once we've got a chance to play with it. The Adaptive Swarm, then, you'll probably have heard there, it's a 25-second cooldown, yet it lasts 36, which means you can have multiple of the Adaptive Swarm out on a pack of enemies at a time. It's got some variable. The only guarantee with Adaptive Swarm is the very first cast, because you decide where that goes. So if you're a tank or a healer, you could throw it on yourself, you could throw it at an ally, and then it'll be on them for 12 seconds and boost your periodic effects, which is extremely good. Then it will go to an enemy. Which enemy is out of your control? Obviously, there's only one enemy alive, like a boss or something, you know where it's going. But once you add in more enemies, it's going to go wherever it wants to go. And then it will choose another ally to come back to, and who that person is again out of your control. If you're in a 5-man group, it can go to whoever. It tries to act smart, but it is out of your hands wherever it will go. Vice versa, if you shoot it at an enemy, you're only guaranteed that it'll go on the enemy you shot it at first time. Which ally it will go to after that tick is out of your control. Unless you're a solo player, it will go back to you. And then which enemy it travels to on its third bounce, again, is out of your control. So sometimes it's really good, Finn, and then sometimes it's really garbage. You can have encounters where it goes on the enemy you want it to, then it goes to you, so you can get the bonus healing, and you can increase your periodic effects, so you throw a Frenzied Rejuve or something on yourself, you can get the benefit of it, that 20% bonus. Then it could travel to a rat that's about to die, and it disappears. It could sometimes travel to an enemy that is about to die anyway, so it instantly travels to something else, or it expires. It disappears, and if you've got 2 of them out and it lands on the same target, it will increase the stack count. So you can get one that has like 5 or 6 or 7 stacks that works alongside it. So it's kind of cool. Once you get multiple of these rolling continuously, it's actually quite nice, and it feels fun. It's got a wonderful little green glow effect. The RNG nature after it starts bouncing, certainly in group play, that's where it kind of becomes a little bit questionable as to its overall usefulness.
Yeah, I think so. It just seems like another one of those abilities that you really hope has some sort of smart interaction behind it.
Mm-hmm.
but from a lot of the abilities we've tested so far, they don't tend to.
No, they don't.
Which is a tiny bit frustrating. I really like this ability. I think it's really fun, especially as Feral and Balance, because it amplifies your dots. That's great. So it definitely feels fun to press. It is a little frustrating when it just disappears because you killed a mob that it was on.
Yep.
So that sort of stuff's going to get a bit annoying, especially in something like M+ or Torghast, where you just have loads of small health enemies kicking about.
Yep.
And if you kill one of them, it just loses a stack. That doesn't feel too great. So I don't know if they can put in like a window. So if it jumps to something and it dies in a couple of seconds, maybe just not remove the stack. That would be kind of nice.
It would be nice for it to exist for its full duration in some form. Because right now what we're saying is, if it doesn't have... Because when you fire it off, it will have the stacks of the bounce on it. So you'll see the stack number. But if it goes to a target that has no stacks left, it'll just disappear. So what you'll have happen is it'll just suddenly go to, say, a Morat, or it'll go to some little enemy. It dies within a couple of seconds. It never even got a chance to tick, and it's basically been Basically, from a DPS point of view, you only had it do damage on the first target. That's it. Other than that, it didn't really do anything for you. If you didn't need the healing, then it just kind of hung around on you for a little while, and then it went off to a rat and did nothing at all. So from that perspective, you literally only got one usage out of a potentially 3 usage spell, which really gives it a variable effect on how useful this thing is. What they could do is tune it so that wherever you fire it first, it's that alone is worthwhile, and anything else it does is just a nice bonus. And then it'll probably get to see some usage. The problem is it's going up against the other Covenants, which basically have fire and forget aspects to them. Certainly the Night Fae one, which is hopefully going to be more powerful now, and of course the Venthia one, which you just line up with all your cooldowns. It's just guaranteed extra damage regardless. So when you look at it like that, if the numbers aren't equal, let's say it needs all 3 bounces to be equal with the Venthia ability, you would just take the Venthia ability because it always works, and this one has a 33% chance of being good, which is not what you want to have happen. I will say, though, for fun, it is the one that's visually most impressive. The rest of the Druid abilities are so boring. They're so unbelievably boring. And this one is only fun because you get to see that nice green cloud of mist floating around all the targets and on yourself. It's nice and visual. And sometimes it works out really well, which is nice. You like to see multiple of them bouncing around doing their thing. So I would choose this for fun. Practicality-wise, though, all the Druid ones, they're pretty lame. Kyrian is still especially bad. I would go with the Venthia, just for practicality reasons.
Yeah, probably same. Just one more thing to call out about this one, although it's awesome. Guardian has a GCD problem with this.
Yes, it does.
So, because you really want to cast it on yourself as Guardian, and then use Frenzied Regen, and it'll buff the healing. So that's like the best way to interact with it. But that's 2 GCDs, and I know even just using Frenzied Regen is a problem on the GCD just now. So it feels a little clunky to use as Guardian in particular.
But I know it's just not a Guardian-only issue. This is becoming more widespread with these Covenant abilities.
Yeah, we'll get to one that's even worse later. But
yes, we will.
I think as much as I'd love to pick this, I would definitely pick it for Balance and Feral, I think. It just doesn't... It's going to be frustrating sometimes if it drops off, so Venthia just covers all bases, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame when you have some of the more interesting spells like this that are fun, but they have obvious problems, is that you kind of default back to the one that just always works, because you don't want that irritation, certainly not over the course of an expansion of it just not working regularly. The guy who's picked the one that's just flat out works... It's just better, right? Consistently. Let's move on to the Hunters then. Take us through it, Finn.
Yeah, Death Chakram. So throw a deadly Chakram at your current target, which will rapidly deal shadow damage up to 7 times. So if you throw it at one target, it will hit them 7 times, but it will bounce between multiple targets as well.
Yep.
And each time it bounces, it will increase its damage by 15% and give you 3 focus.
Yes.
So... to get the full use of this ability, you need at least 2 targets for it to bounce between. Because you want the damage to stack up and you want the focus regen.
Correct, yeah. It looks cool as well. It looks very, very cool. It
does look pretty cool, yeah. There's a new animation on it. It was just like a cogwheel or something.
It's like
initially.
a weird buzzsaw thing. It was so strange.
It's fire and forget. That's the best summary of it. I didn't particularly love playing with it. The focus regen is a bit weird on Marksman and on BM. I don't think you ever really have focus problems when you're doing your rotation. On Survival, you do. You definitely do have focus problems just because you don't have the haste that you have on Live. So it's a little extra focus gen for Survival, but not on single target. It requires the bounces. I just ended up pressing it on CD and forgetting what it did, if I'm totally honest.
Agreed. When I was playing with this, I was not interested in it after the first couple of presses, because it just became like the same way I kind of thought about normal chakrams that have been in for a while now. It's something you press because it's ready to be pressed, and that was kind of how I felt about it. It didn't feel any different to it whatsoever. It was a nice effect, like visually it's quite nice, but in terms of usefulness, I kind of lost interest in it, and compared to some of the other Hunter abilities, which have had a really wide, a really wide and positive reaction to the other ones, I thought this was sadly the most boring one, mainly because it's the 45-second cooldown. You're kind of doing it all the time anyway, and as you said, the focus aspect of it, it's too variable depending on the specs, and as Finn said then, you're likely to get to the haste levels on Serve where it doesn't even make sense there anymore. And the other classes are designed from the ground up, like they're foundationally designed to handle their focus pits and troughs. So they need the extra one. Maybe if you get in a mess, you'll get the bonus of it, but generally speaking, not really. So from that perspective, it was like, it's just an extra, it just felt like having chakrams. It felt like the talent. It felt like just, when you get it, you kind of just throw it out there and it's doing its thing and it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. It does a lot of damage. It's pretty dull.
It's pretty dull.
Not a huge fan of it.
But this is where we get on then, because the Night Fae ability has potentially been changed, and we're looking to test it over the next couple of days to have 0 cooldown.
Yeah, I hope that's not right.
Same. But I would choose Night Fae anyway, actually, purely based on the fact that it's the most visually spectacular. It's really nice. It doesn't work well with MM. I would still definitely go Kyrian with Marksman, I think, but the Night Fae ability looks great, feels fun. Having lightning shoot from the sky is far more satisfying than Death Chakrams, and it also makes you think about your gameplay to try and get as many GCDs in there and hit as many targets as possible while you are using it. So from that perspective, one, I'm more interested in my gameplay. Death Chakrams does nothing really for my gameplay, and it feels better and more satisfying to use. It feels satisfying if you get the most out of it. I really like it. So for mine, the best of the bunch would be generally Night Fae, but if I was MM, I would still go with the Going Dark.
Yeah, I think from a fun perspective, it was Night Fae for me, for all 3 specs. I really like it. It has some weird interactions with Marksman that needs looked at, but generally it's much more visually appealing than the rest. I was going to say, before the patch notes came out the other day, that Venthyr is probably the one that has the most potential to be good, though, because resetting your kill shot, and kill shot does so much damage. Venthyr is probably the one that you're going to go for until they change the Night Fae one to have no CD. And if it is up permanently, you're going to play Night Fae. There's no way you wouldn't. It does so much damage. If it's up all the time, it's insane. So yeah,
boring.
Mark me down as Night Fae, Chris.
Boring. Boring. Let's move on to the mages then. The one that most mages were looking forward to the most, Finn, was the Deathborn. You transform into a powerful skeletal mage for 20 seconds, and while in the form of a skeletal mage, your Frostbolt, Fireball, and Arcane Blast hit up to 2 enemies near your target, and your spell damage is increased by 10%, 5% of base mana, 1.5 second cast, 3-minute cooldown. Yeah, more spells to set up mages here. It's good mother of Christ for arcane mages here. I hope you didn't like actually attacking the enemy. You've got 12 minutes of setup to do before you can do that. Deathborn. One, it looks cool. It is really big. It is a pretty awesome looking skeletal mage, to be fair, even though it has these sort of honeycomb shoulders. I hope they allow us to modify that some way.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Add weapons to it or transmog it in some way. That would be cool. This one is wildly varied, although it is probably the best for all 3 specs. Obviously, it works with Arcane Blast. So one of the issues we've had continuously through this process, Finn, is Blizzard's decision to go with class-focused abilities that work for all 3, 4, or 2 of your specs, regardless of their role, which has heavily limited their ability to get them equal for all of those specs, which is a problem when you're supposed to be tied into these covenants. Here, this one is very obvious. Frostbolt cleaving isn't that amazing. Some extra icicles, sure. Fireball cleaving, but not pyro. Okay, I mean, not great. Arcane Blast is the hardest hitting spell Arcane has, and allowing that to cleave is significantly more powerful than the other 2, which means it's wacky for Arcane, the amount of damage. I mean, even in these low-geared test characters, it's already more than double the damage of the others. Pretty crazy, Finn, as to the disparity, I guess, between the 3 specs here.
Yeah, this will come up again on this list, but I think they've pretty clearly just put, well, what's the filler spell for each spec, and then just put it into this. Forgetting that the filler spell does different things for different specs. It's really weird. Putting Frostbolt and Fireball are not the equivalent of Arcane Blast.
No.
Even though they are the fillers for each of the specs. Pyro and Ice Lance, as a minimum, needs to be in here. So, double cleaving on your Ice Lance could be really fun. Cleaving on your Pyro definitely will be fun. And because you spread Ignite manually now, doesn't really impact sort of weird Ignite cleave spread. So, I think that needs to go in. Because Arcane is just... you get so much from this, it's kind of ridiculous, actually.
It is. It needs to work with Pyro, it needs to work with the Ice Lances, it needs to do something else for the other 2 to bring it up to par. As I said at the beginning, though, it's still likely to be the go-to choice for mages.
Oh, yeah.
It lines up with your cooldowns, which in itself is irritating. Your Rune of Power into Deathborn, Arcane Power, and then it's charged up, and then all the things, mirror images, goes on top of that as well. It is going to be still likely the go-to, considering the weird interactions that mages have with their other spells, whether it be the Mirrors of Torment or the Ikirian ability, I forget the name of it, Radiant Spark, I believe it's called. Some very weird interactions happen with them, with consuming the charges and things like that. This thing still flat out increases your spell damage by 10% and allows your spells to cleave. It's very much likely to be the go-to. I wish with all my heart, though, Finn, it was instant cast off the GCD.
I mean, they need to do some GCD work with Mage. It's kind of ridiculous right now. Arcane is awful. I think there's 7 or 8 spells you cast to get warmed up as Arcane, which means you're out of the fight for like 10 seconds. It's so dumb.
Yeah, it's awful. It really is bad. And this does not help, because this has actually got a cast time associated with it.
Yeah.
They really need to look into this and make it work. It would be even better. They could even if they made it so that if you cast Deathborn, it activates your powerful ability. It activates your cooldown if it's off cooldown. That would be so much better. So it's like if you have Combustion off cooldown, you activate Deathborn, then it activates Combustion as well, or something like that. It'd be better than what it is now. But it definitely needs to either be instant cast off the GCD, something. The transformation is cool, but the mages have such problems right now. And the answer isn't just to prune their abilities, Blizz. That is not the answer.
Just make mirror images offensive.
Oh, no. Let's move on to one of the least interesting, actually, of the Necrolord abilities, which is the Monk. This is Bone Dust Brew. Highly practical, not particularly fun. You hurl a brew created from the bones of your enemies. So edgy. Coating all targets struck for 10 seconds, so it's very much like the Exploding Keg of the past. Your abilities have a 15% chance to affect the target a second time at 25% effectiveness as shadow damage or healing. Mistweaver will gain Gust of Mists. Heals targets with your Bone Dust Brew active for an additional 34% of attack power. If you're a Brew Master, your Tiger Palm and Keg Smash reduce the cooldown of your brews by additional 1 second when striking enemies with your Bone Dust Brew active. It's wacky. For Windwalkers, very strange one, Finn. Spinning Crane Kick refunds 1 chi when striking enemies with Bone Dust Brew active. 40-yard range, instant 1 minute CD, very regular usage ability. you take us through this one, because it's varied across all three.
It feels a bit meh, to be honest. I think probably we've been blessed with the other monk abilities in that they're all awesome.
True.
I love all three of the other ones, which makes this one seem kind of shit. Even though it's not, it's actually really good.
That's the problem with practicality. You know what it is? It's garrisons. Garrisons are highly practical, but they're fuck boring. And no one cares, like, about highly practical spells, especially stuff like this. What we want is stupid fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other monk abilities are stupid fun. And this one is kind of a bit meh. So, yeah, for Mistweaver, all it does is buff your mastery. It's fine. For Brew Master, seems... Yeah, for Brew Master, it seems like it's really strong. You get a 10-second-ish reduction on your brews every time you cast it, so you get 10 seconds every minute.
Yeah.
That's decent. I'll take it.
Sure.
And then for Windwalker, Spinning Crane Kick refunds 1 chi when striking enemies with your Bone Dust Brew active. I don't know about that one.
No, it makes it so weird.
It's going to be a numbers thing, for sure. There's going to need to be some sims on this stuff, but I've not run into a scenario yet where I've cast Spinning Crane Kick and been like, God, I wish that gave me chi. Never.
We even have a talent that gives it for free and procs regularly anyway. Yeah. It's like...
And at the moment, that's when it's fun to press, because it does insane damage and it's free. So, yeah, this one just feels a little bit weird, a little out of place on the Windwalker one. I don't know why. Just make Tiger Palm give you 2 chi instead, or like 3, or an additional... Just do something else with your resource generator.
Or even lower the cost of fists, something.
Make fists only cost 2 or something. Just anything. No. A little bit weird on the Spinning Crane Kick. I get that it's meant to be like an AoE generator. I just don't think Windwalker needs one.
No,
if I'm honest.
No, I don't. I would never choose this purely because it's so fucking boring. As Finn said, the other monk abilities are so much better.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, they're so much more fun that you just wouldn't. You wouldn't. Now I think we do contrast on which one we prefer. I much prefer the Night Fae Feline Stomp. I love Feline Stomp. It is the coolest looking Covenant ability in the entire game as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that you can create these chains of them to really just kind of have fun with it, even if you're doing sort of mundane trash AoE. You're working through the dungeon as you've done a billion times, you're clearing trash. You can still have fun just with that ability, just like painting the ground with it. This one, though, I couldn't give 2 fucks about anything it does. It's just too boring.
Agree. I agree with the Night Fae one as well. I think it's the best one. Well, yeah, mirrors are so good. The Mirror of Torment thing is amazing.
But they removed the mirror.
Is it called Mirror of Torment? Is that the Mage one?
No, it's called... it's Doorway or something?
Yeah, whatever it is. The Monk Venthyr one. They've removed the actual mirror. Yeah, not a fan of that.
Yeah, I
don't know why it's just a red swirl now.
Yeah, what the fuck, Blizz?
Yeah, I much preferred the mirror, Blizz. Get on that one, Ian,
that's such a weird decision. It bothers me.
That one's strange.
Yeah, it bothers me. It's actually called Fallen Order now. I think it was called something else. But even the description is opens a mirror. But they took the mirror out.
There was a mirror, but there's not one now.
Mirror, but there's no mirror now.
That's really strange.
Let's go on to the Pallies then. The Vanquishes Hammer. How ultimately disappointed was I in this ability? Vanquishes Hammer. You throw a hammer at your target, dealing 8% of spell power or shadow damage, and empowering your next for Ret Paladins. Templar's Verdict automatically triggers Divine Storm. Word of Glory automatically triggers Light of Dawn. And for prop, Word of Glory automatically triggers Shield of the Righteous. So it is an extra hammer. It does not replace your Hammer of Wrath. You'll be glad to know. It's a 45-second cooldown. And it does what it says on the tin. It's kind of in the monk territory. It's something you throw into your rotation. And there you go. Yeah. Pretty much. You can kind of set it up a little bit. So you do Word of Glory, Light of Dawns. The nicest ability I found it to use it with was Protection. Because if you're healing other people, you're giving up a Shield of the Righteousness in order to do that with Word of Glory. Or if you're healing yourself, you have to make that choice as a prop paladin. It's like, do I heal myself or do I bunker down behind the shield? And I have to make that choice with my holy power. This meant that you didn't. You were good. That did feel nice. For everything else, though, it felt super boring. uninteresting, and honestly, there's so many procs, and this is kind of my issue with this, is you have so many procs as a paladin that you kind of have this going already. There are so many times you fire off a shield and you get a free Word of Glory anyway. There are so many times that you can have free Divine Storm procs, etc., that this didn't feel like much of anything was happening. Compared to the other paladin abilities, big snowfest for me on this one.
I don't even know why we're discussing paladin abilities when Kyrion's a thing, but yeah, so this one is weird to use. I didn't like it that much as Ret. I did like it as Holy, though.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I think it's got some uses as Holy. Light of Dawn's pretty fun to use, I think. So getting a little Light of Dawn proc is kind of cool. I get as protection, it would be very good. I didn't play around with it that much, but it does seem like it's something that would be generally pretty useful.
Yeah, for sure. On prot, it felt really nice.
Yeah, but as Ret, it's meh.
It was definitely, for me, it leaned towards prot. As Ret, I couldn't give two fucks. Like, I have all these procs going off anyway. This was just yet another one. But for prot, it did feel nice to use. It had some nice practical usage. Again, it comes down to the fact that, well, Paladins are a weird place. And I will say we've not had chance yet to check the Night Fate ability and how that's actually going to work. That's not going to be for a little while yet. But once we do, we will come back to you with it, because it is looking to be the throne of Paladins. That ability does seem incredibly broken. But right now, if I had to pick, I would never pick Vanquishes Hammer. It's nice, it's practical, it's good. Divine Toll all the way, though. Divine Toll is just so good. So stupidly good that it just shits on everything else Paladins have.
Yes. I don't see anything beating it.
No, not at all, for any of the specs. Even though it's boring for Rex, it's 5 judgments, it's still 5 judgments. It's still cool. And especially now we've done Torghast, which has all the modifiers in it for Divine Toll. So fun. So stupidly fun. Let's move on to the Priest then, Mr. Finn, with one that has already been nerfed.
Yes,
they have already nerfed this. This is actually the second time we're recording this video, but there have been some spell changes, so we had to come back and do it again. Tell us about the Unholy Nova. Why was it nerfed, and is it still a beast?
Yeah, okay, thank God it was nerfed, first of all. So, Unholy Nova, it is an explosion of dark energy that heals allies within 15 yards of you, and infects enemies within 15 yards of you. The infection deals damage, and every time an ally hits something with an infection, it heals them. So it essentially marks them like old school Judgment, and you get Judgment healing. That's pretty much what it does. So it has been nerfed. It was 20% of spell power on the dot and on the heal when you hit the thing that has the dot on it. It's now 12%.
Yep.
Still don't think that's enough to make this not broken as fuck.
Nope.
But, yeah, so the weird thing about this, right, is we'll go through Shadow first, right, because no one's going to play it, so who cares?
No.
Shadow doesn't really get much from this other than it does some AoE damage. And if you want to do AoE damage as Shadow, just go Kyrian, because the Kyrian ability does more AoE damage than any other spell in the game right now.
Yep. And it gives it sanity now.
And it gives sanity now, but not on the AoE component, just on the single target one.
Correct.
So you're going to go Kyrian if you want to do AoE. So just ignore this for Shadow. For the healers, for Holy, it does an explosion of damage, and the dot does quite a lot of healing. 12% of spell power is a lot.
Yep.
It's just less than Atonement. I think Atonement is about 20%. So, generally pretty good. You're going to do a ton of healing with this. You do need to stand within 15 yards of the target, which is kind of frustrating, and it feels like it might not be that useful in raids, and more it's like an M+ thing.
Yep.
Because in M+, this is going to be busted.
Oh, yeah.
But then Disc is a whole other monster.
Are we double dipping again?
Yes. Disc double dips with this, and I'm pretty sure this is the most broken Covenant ability right now for Disc.
Yeah.
And I mean most broken as in any spec in the game, this is the most broken one when you put it on a Disc Priest. Because you can put Atonement on yourself, run into a pack, press Unholy Nova, and just go and make a sandwich. Like, just leave your PC. You don't need to do anything else. It will just keep you alive, right? It heals you with the initial burst. The initial burst doesn't do Atonement, but the dot does. So not only are you healing everyone with the dot ticking, but everyone who is hitting that is also getting healed for 12%. So before the nerf, it was like having 2 atonements out on everyone. So it's slightly less than that now. It's like 1.5 atonements, but that's still broken. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you pull enough things in a Mythic Plus dungeon and you press this, you're invulnerable.
Pretty much. It does feel like there's just no way, unless the enemy's one-shotting you, so you don't have any chance to heal, that you're literally just completely invulnerable to damage while this thing is up. And it's on a 1-minute cooldown.
Yeah, it's just really strong. It's super strong for disc. But I will say, I still think the Night Fae Priest one is better in a raid environment. And this is almost specifically designed for 5-man content or solo content. Things that you're going to be close to the enemy all the time, or regularly enough to use this.
And on multi-targets.
It's going to be really good. And on multi-targets. Multi-targets, this just seems nuts.
If only you could change between for each environment.
If only. It'd be weird if you could just swap them.
Well, this is one of those spells that presents the problem that if you enjoy doing, say, raiding and Mythic Plus, in fact, if you're a raider, you likely are forced to do Mythic Plus, that you're just not side-by-side comparable with a priest that has Unholy Nova. That's just the nature of the beast here. It's so far and away better all the time in that environment. With a 1-minute CD that makes your group practically invulnerable, if this stays as it is, and I imagine it's not going to, if this stays as it is, the amount of groups rocking a Disc Priest to high groups already feels like it's going to be crazy. Just because of Unholy Nova. Which should maybe not be the way this is supposed to go. God, priests are in a mess, Finn.
Yeah, they're in an awful state right now.
Yeah, it's really bad.
I think disc priests are in an amazing state.
Disc priests are laughing, so I'm coming back against the class thing.
Yeah, if you play disc priest, you're having the best time ever, because you get everything from all of these. You double dip on almost every ability that's been added to the game, so... Yeah, interesting, really.
What would you pick?
Fun,
what's the most fun priest ability?
Kyrian.
Yeah. Boon of the Ascended. Yeah, it's very much the most fun. Practicality-wise, I mean, Night Fae for raids.
I think if you play Shadow, you probably take Kyrian.
Yeah.
And I think if your focus is raids, then you play Night Fae, and if your focus is 5-man content, or even PvP probably, then Unholy Nova, the Necrolord one.
That does seem to be the way it goes. That does be the way it goes. Now, we are going to bypass over the rogues for now, guys, purely because it's a couple of days before they appear due to the nature of the cycling content. But we will get to Serrated Bone Spike with the rogues after we had some playtesting. So even if it was up to date, we still need to playtest it for quite a while to give our thoughts on it. So we're going to move over to the Shamans, Mr. Finn. We're in a theme here, guys, of class issues coming in. So Primordial Wave is the Shaman ability where you blast your target with a Primordial Wave. You deal 65% of spell power and 65% of attack power as shadow damage, and you apply Flame Shock to the target. Or Resto, they give Riptide. Then it will cause your next Lightning Bolt if you're Enhancement, Lava Burst if you're Elemental, or Healing Wave if you are Resto, to also hit that target if you cast it on something else. Now, what this means, that you could do big fucking Lava Burst cleave as Elemental. So good for Elemental, Finn. Unfortunately for the enhancements, a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah, it's awesome for Ellie. It's actually like the perfect spell for Ellie. Mm-hmm. It means you can have 4 Flame Shocks out, and you can Lava Burst all 4 targets.
Yep.
Which is just awesome. Big fan of that. For Restoration, it just gives you like an additional heal that's not chain heal, that'll allow you to heal multiple targets.
Yeah, specific targets, which I think is the feedback we've had from the healers, is that because it's based on your Riptides, it's healing specific people, whereas chain heal obviously is kind of smartly does pick its targets to go through, but there are always those moments where you're like, I wish it had gone to that guy. Yeah,
definitely. So generally really good for both of those specs. For enhancement, so there is a playstyle that makes this work for enhancement, but I don't particularly enjoy it myself. So that would be you playing Hailstorm as a talent, which makes your Storm Strike reset your Flame Shocks. Getting as many Flame Shocks out as possible. Using Stormkeeper to buff the Lightning Bolt, and then Primordial Wave into Lightning Bolt so that a Stormkeeper Lightning Bolt hits all of the targets.
Yeah.
And it does do a lot of damage. But it requires a lot of setup. And because this is on a 45-second recharge now, it just feels like you're almost permanently setting up for this.
It's
just
practically
to use one
impossible, right? I mean, it's so impractical to expect to do that on a regular basis. Not only does it require the enemies to be up long enough to be preparing all these flame shocks for the inevitable burst, which will happen in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
It also requires, as you said, you need to have a couple of other spells ready. You also need to talent spec into specific talents in order to get that use case out of it. On a 45-second recharge, no.
Yeah, it's just weird. I just think it doesn't fit enhancement at all. Well, it doesn't fit enhancement at all using Lightning Bolt. I think there's definitely some other stuff they could have done with it. They could make Storm Strike cleave.
For
that
sure,
would be fine.
so much better.
So, I just think there's some weird stuff. I don't know why Lightning Bolt was chosen, but I mean, there's definitely going to be clips kicking around in a couple of months' time once more people get access of people doing mad AoE damage with this. But it will require hefty setup that I'm not that keen on doing, to be honest.
It's just impractical. It's possible, for sure. It's totally possible to do something very cool with this as enhancement. As Ellie, it's super easy, because you're flame shocking anyway. Like, there's no, there's no setup required. You're already doing it as a natural part of your playstyle. But that could be the thing, Finn, is when we're talking about these spells, is that people will put out these videos of Primordial Wave enhancement, setting up and getting it all exactly right, and then making this one big splooge, which isn't practical throughout normal gameplay. They could lead to it getting, like, nerfed for enhancement, and all sorts of weird stuff happening with it. But as you said, it doesn't feel nice to use as enhancement at all.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
Yeah, I really did not enjoy it. And when it comes to picking it, we're in that class-based situation. Where this feels like it was designed for Elemental from the ground up. It feels like, this would be cool for Elemental to be able to shoot off all these lava bursts into all these flame shock targets. That's going to be awesome. We need to squeeze it into enhancement as well, though, right? Oh, okay. Lightning Bolt, I guess? I mean, Flame Shock, like you said, even if you're not taking Hailstorm, Flame Shock's not a big part of your life.
Yeah, it'll be numbers, but I'm not even convinced you would use it as enhancement. I mean, obviously it'll get number tuned, so you'll need to, probably. But it is one of those things that's like, it's not a key part of your rotation, in my mind, anyway. It's like an unpruned spell that's kind of decent to use sometimes. But
it fills the GCD slot. That's how I always end up using it. Is it? It's like the lowest prio, really.
Yeah.
Got another GCD spare. Cool. Throw a flame shock out there. So when it comes to choosing, then, like, if I was Ellie, I would probably choose Primordial Wave. If for enhancement, I still like Fey Infusion. I really like that spell. I think it looks cool and it fills a niche once you set up your AoE and stuff like that. I really like that for enhancement. If I was Resto, I'd probably go Vesper. But now we've just chosen 3 different covenants, or at least in my opinion, 3 different covenants for one class, which doesn't work. And this is my fear with the Shamans we talked about weeks ago, before we even got to test these, is the likelihood that some people who do multi-roll their Shaman may end up picking something that's kind of middle ground for all 3, because the other ones kind of shit on the other specs that they play, and are really bad.
You'll just take Vesper.
Exactly, yeah, you'll just take Vesper. I think the Wave got buffed recently. The Venthia Wave got some buffs that need to be rechecked. But generally speaking, it won't change much of this mindset regardless. But that's a real shame, is that you've got like something awesome for when I want to play Elemental for a bit. I really want to play around with Primordial Wave. It looks sick. Can't do it. Kind of have to stick with something that's good for all 3.
Yeah. It's so good for Ellie as well, because you can... The one thing that we've not probably talked about a little bit actually on this is that it doubles up your single target as well, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a Flame Shock on a target and you Primordial Wave it, and then Lava Burst it, it'll cast 2 Lava Bursts. So that's like really good for Ellie. It's the same for enhancement, though. It sucks for enhancement so bad. And I know that Fey Transfusion, or the Night Fey one for enhancement, has rotational issues, because you really don't want to be not attacking as enhancement. It's just like how the spec works. But it's way more fun to press than this.
For sure, yeah. I love that one.
And it's way more fun to press than Vesper. But you'll probably just end up going Vesper because you have to play all three at some stage.
Yeah, Vesper just works. Like I don't mind Vesper. It's got some really good bonuses to it. Like, it does make you want to do a bit of hybrid play. It does make you want to do a little bit of healing. But even if you're not going to do that, it still just works and gets it done. I think Phage Fusion is just more fun to press, like you said. Like, and it's got a wonderful graphic to it as well. Chain Harvest, I don't feel that at all because it just doesn't do that for me. Certainly as enhancement. But the Shamans have got a weird one to deal with. Is they have the most divisive, I think, of all the class-based stuff to deal with. Like, Druids have got it as well, but all their spells are boring. The problem Shamans have is their spells aren't boring. They're kind of interesting. Like, Vesper's, I'd say, the most boring, and that's still not particularly boring in terms of using it. So they've got some difficulty there. I don't envy the position the Shamans are in right now at all. Certainly those of them who like to play different specs. That's tough. That's got to be tough. Let's move on to the Warlocks, Finn. The Decimating Bolts. Turbo overpowered. Hurl a bolt of shadow magic at your target. You deal 4 times 50% of spell power as shadow damage, and increasing the damage of your next Incinerates, Drain Souls, and Shadow Bolts by 200%, spec respective, of course, there. Decimation Bolts damage and the bonus to Incinerate, Drain Soul, or Shadow Bolt both increase as your target's health decreases. It's a 2.5 second cast with a 45-second cooldown. This is falling into the same category as Deathborn. Really, really good for one spec, but not too good for the others, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's turbo overpowered. I'm really surprised that this wasn't one of the things that got changed in the recent notes.
Yep.
So, yeah, it has some weird interactions. Like you say, it's definitely better for Affliction than it is for the other two.
Yeah.
It's better for Affliction than it is for Destro, and the other spec isn't talentable just now, so don't even play it.
The other spec. This is for somebody who's played a Warlock for how long have you been a Warlock? 4 years?
About 5 or 6 years, probably.
5 or 6 years. So it's Affliction, Destro, and the other spec.
Yeah, the other spec. I don't even know what it's called now. It's terrible. So for Affliction, right? So I'll try and explain this pretty simply, but the more damage that Drain Soul does, the more you generate shards, basically. Because Drain Soul allows you to snipe shards more efficiently. So it used to be a skill cap for sniping shards on fights where an enemy with low health would pop out, you would quickly tab to them or target them, Drain Soul them, get the shard, and dump it on the main target.
Yep.
This makes this easier because your Drain Soul does so much damage with this. I mean, like, more damage than any other spell you have. So you can tab to a target that has relatively low health and just kill it with Drain Soul without even thinking about it.
Yeah, nothing more frustrating than when I was main Warlock a couple of times throughout my WoW life, Drain Souling something and it just not dying, so it's almost doing like a full channel, but you're really only doing it because you want the shard. I don't really want to kill the target or do damage to it. Having that eliminated is such a quality of life improvement.
Yeah, and it definitely feels good to play with, so that's a real positive. For Shadow Bolt, for the other spec, for demo, for Shadow Bolt to do 200% damage, it doesn't do anything to your resource gen. It doesn't really do anything to your damage either, because once you get up and running, you very rarely press Shadow Bolt, because you tend to have either you're just summoning demons or you have procs to generate shards from that you don't use Shadow Bolt for. So, a little bit weird. I think they need to do something with the resource gen for Shadow Bolt and Incinerate, maybe instead of the damage done, in order to balance this out a little bit. The one thing that I will say is that when we talented this into Fire and Brimstone on Incinerate, where Incinerate hits everything, the buff never went away. So
it's clearly a bug.
I know that's a bug, but that was fun.
That was fun.
That was really fun.
But you're absolutely correct on your saying there, is that for Drain Soul, it's not only a huge damage source for Affliction and the Execute, it also generates resources. buffing Incinerate. I mean, I think you said Incinerate was doing more damage than Chaos Bolt.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't do anything. It's not going to get you more embers. It's nice, but it's not. It's not. Incinerate is there to lead to something else. That's its purpose. It is the filler spell to lead to something else. The same as Shadow Bolts. That's all they exist for. And this isn't helping what they actually are designed to do.
Yep. It's definitely the same, like you said, as Deathborn. I think Blizzard have put in the filler spells for each spec into this bit of code for this spell and forgot that the filler spells do something different for each of the specs.
Mm-hmm.
So Drain Soul is not the same as Shadow Bolt. Even though it is a filler, it's not.
No.
The other thing is that Drain Soul obviously double dips on this because it's an execute anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets an additional execute. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's so broken for Affliction right now. And it does a little bit of extra damage for the other two, but it's not like end of the world's amazing.
Yeah, it's not like you're trying to cast more Incinerates and Shadow Bolts. That's not a goal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to do that. The Warlocks have got such interesting ones. They really do. Like, variety-wise, they're actually quite nice. I mean, I really want Venthyr to be the one to go to, because it looks awesome.
It's so cool.
It's such a cool spell, but as we said, we've tested it for hours and hours, or Finn has, I should say, for hours and hours of testing, and it's not smart, which ruins it. Completely decimates it if it's not a smart spell, and by smart we mean it's not applying the curses to the targets that should be getting the certain curses. I think of our Affliction, definitely Decimating Bolt. I think for the others, I still prefer Scouring Tithe, the Kyrian ability. I think that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think that's how
for resource gen, because this is the problem, right? It's exactly the issue with Decimating Bolt. Warlocks are more fun when they have more resources. It's as simple as that. Like, having more resources allows you to do what the spec is designed to do with those resources more. And that makes the specs more interesting. So getting that Sniper, Scouring Tithe and stuff, giving you 5 full soul shards allows you to do something pretty cool with all 3 of the specs. Whereas some of these other ones just don't. They just don't do that. And that's less interesting in my eyes, at least.
Yep, agree.
Let's move on to our final one for the Necrolords then. Probably the most controversial one that people are going to have to deal with. I am glad, although Warrior is on my list of potential mains, I might stay away just because of this ability. The Conquerors Banner. Extremely good looking spell. You brandish the banner of the Necrolords for 2 minutes, increasing your movement speed by 10% and causing Mortal Strike, Raging Blow, and Shield Slam, respective of spec, to grant you glory. Killing an enemy grants 2 stacks of glory. Reactivating the ability plants that banner in the ground and grants 20% max HP and 50% attack speed to you, so you always get the benefit, and 4 allies within 15 yards of the banner, who can be anyone. It lasts 2 seconds per glory up to 30 seconds. It's a 2-minute CD. So to clarify how this thing works, guys, you press the button once, the banner will appear on your back. Looks fantastic. You're going to be building up these stacks of glory. These stacks of glory purely determine how long you will have the buff for. You can repress the button at any time. The only difference will be how long the buff lasts, depending on how many stacks of glory you've got. So you do not need to work up to the 15 stacks required for the full 30 seconds. If you're going to be fighting something for 10 seconds, you could use it and then get it back on cooldown to regen for another usage very, very quickly. The 50% attack speed is pretty extreme. That is a massive, massive damage speed bonus. However, as we said, it goes on 4 allies, which includes casters, Mr. Finn. If they happen to be stood near you, it can pick those guys. Therefore, it is wasted. The big fear with this is, 1, this ability is awesome. It's really, really cool. I enjoy using this spell. I enjoy having the big green circle when we plant the banner and actually firing down. I loved the banners when the Warriors had. The issue is, 1, is this going to be mandatory? Because it is giving 50% attack speed every 2 minutes for up to 30 seconds. That's a 25% uptime, excluding generating stacks of glory, of course. For 50% attack speed, Mythic Plus, you can imagine, it's all, if you've got a melee stack and Holy Paladin in there, that's pretty extreme. In which case, will Warriors feel forced into it, which really takes away a lot of the fun.
Yeah. Which would be such a shame because it is really fun to use. Like, really fun. Playing solo Torghast with this thing's hilarious, especially with a wee banner on your back.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Yeah, it's going to be... It probably is going to be mandatory. 50% attack speed is crazy good.
So
the
good.
problem I have with it is that 15 yards, you're going to have a location to drop this, and melee are going to have to go to that location to get the buff. Because when it goes on a caster, it doesn't provide cast speed, it provides attack speed.
Yep.
So
Melee attack speed.
Yeah, just run in with your priest and hit the boss. To be honest, you might as well as Shadow right now. So
The salt.
that might actually work. So yeah, well, I mean, imagine how many thrash you could get off as a druid. It'd be awesome. So yeah, there's definitely some weird interactions. I think it's going to be slightly difficult to manage to make sure the right people get the buff.
Frustrating.
But I think it will. I think it will be mandatory. It's so weird.
Yeah, this feels just like completely out of place with the rest of the warrior abilities, and the other warrior abilities are all really, really good. Like, all of them are great. Which makes this one feel like... This one is as good as the others. It's really fun to play with. I think everybody's going to enjoy messing around with this and dropping it and having that banner on their back. The issue with it is, of course, is if it's forced on you, then, or, you know, you feel like you're forced to take this, while you're looking at the guys who are using Condemn, Spear of Bastion, using all those kind of abilities, you're just going to be like, well, fuck me, right? I really want to play around with those ones. This idea of this super powerful group buff, and it's the same problem we're going to run into when we cover the Paladin Night Fae ability, is problematic from so many different angles that Blizzard really needs to probably do away with that aspect, because it's not helpful. It's really not helpful. I think if it didn't buff the group, it would be better. You can choose something that gives you more health and attack speed on demand. That's fine as a single player ability. I think that's fine. Yeah. There's no need for it in my eyes to do anything to allies around you. It's not a nice little bonus, which is what some people go, oh, it's just a nice little bonus. It's too strong. It's a nice little bonus. 50% attack speed is wacky, especially if we start including Wind Fury, which we've been doing some testing with today, where attack speed seems to have a dramatic effect on how often you can get Wind Fury procs. And then you start to see this sort of stacking happening of certain classes, Finn.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm against that entirely, because that's the reason that fun things like Monk don't get spots right now, is because warriors have too much utility, demon hunters have too much utility, and giving the warrior another piece, I'm not entirely sure that's what they needed.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. No, they already have Rallying Cry. They already bring high mobility, which is useful. They already do so much. They also are bringing Shattering Throw, which is going to break immunities and do massive damage on Absorb Shields. We're bound to hit a boss at some point that puts an Absorb Shield on itself, or some adds that do that in a critical scenario. Warriors are already going to shine there. They didn't need this. If I was to say which is the most fun, though, the Warrior is the most difficult for me to pick out of every other one. I'm going to lean into Necrolord. This is the first time I'm going to move away from Kyrian, actually, purely because I really like, one, having the banner. I think it looks awesome, and I like it when you throw it down on top of going into Avatar and you get that big attack speed bonus. It feels really satisfying to use. I am criminally worried, though, that it's going to be forced onto Warriors. Prot, though, I would still go Night Fae for protection. Yeah,
I was going to say, Prot Night Fae just seems really strong. But I think, I would probably go Necrolord as well, actually. It's really good. It's fun to play with. Even if it was just a solo buff, I would still want to play it.
Yeah, it just feels that way. Like, Kyrian is useful all the time. Spirit Bastion is great. Condemn is... so many people are on the Condemn train, and I don't blame them. It's the least interesting of the abilities to play with, as far as I'm concerned. But Necrolord is the way forward. And that's it. We are missing a couple, Mr. Finn. The Pally and the Rogue, which we'll get out to you over the next few days. Don't worry about that. But looking at this sheet, it's not gone the way we hoped at all. We have pretty much decided that there are clearly significantly better abilities than others.
Yeah, and a lot of them are really spec-specific as well, which is a concern.
It's a bigger concern than anything for me. Like, the spec stuff, I think, is going to hurt more players than they realize. I mean, I've looked at a lot of threads. There was quite an outcry after our Night Fae video on the WoW subreddit, which a lot of it was concerning the Necrolord shield, which I hopefully we've explained why we're so afraid of. Not afraid, but don't think it's anywhere near as good as people think. But really, the focus is this class-focused thing. Like the Shamans, the priests. You just feel like you're just gonna suffer and be punished. From casual, all mythic to casual, you're gonna have that experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I play a Shaman on live, and I play Ellie and Enhancement, and I really don't know what I would choose, to be honest.
You're just going to suffer, right?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to pick one that's mediocre for both specs just to function, which is not great. It's not what I want to do, and I want to pick... Ironically, the two things that I would have to pick for Shaman, neither of them are the Covenant I actually want to play.
I think that sums it up perfectly, is that the Covenant I want to choose doesn't match what I do in the game. And that's ultimately the big conflict players are having, is that it doesn't marry up this way. So we'll continue to see how Blizz develops this. We're going to follow it along. This isn't the end of Covenant Wars by any means. The whole purpose of this is to see how our choices and experiences develop as Blizzard makes changes, so we will return. And we still have some to show you. The Night Fae Paladins, the Rogue Necrolords, I think we've still got to check out, and get them involved as well. But thank you so much for listening, guys. We'll be back with you when there's something worth showing you. That is how we're going to do this. Thank you again to Finn for the hundreds of hours of testing involved in this. It's been very helpful to be able to bash heads and also to weirdly come out with like the same answers. See you again, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.